Hey, everybody ready? Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council chambers. It's been a long time since we've had this many people attend a council meeting. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I know it's a hot topic and an important topic for the community as we move forward with our process with the trees in the city of Virginia. Just to note that this is a public hearing. All councilors are present. We have a full quorum here. We have before you one issue, and that is to discuss the tree policy and explain how trees are being managed in the city of Virginia. If you haven't had an opportunity to get one of these, there are some right here on the front. You're welcome to grab one and take a look at it. It has our tree policy in there. If you want to take a look at it, please do not hesitate to do so. So what we're going to do is we're going to take as much public input as we can with respect to the concerns regarding this trees policy that we have in Virginia, and everybody will have an opportunity to speak. So, we'll have to do it one at a time moving forward. But before we do that, we're going to invite our Park and Rec Director for it, which is Brian Silber. And we as a City Council have given a lot of responsibilities to our Park and Rec Director and with assistance from our Public Works Director. So Public Works Director Jim Rosvit and Park and Rec Director Brian Silber. And so we'll explain the tree policy, what we're doing, how we're going about it. And if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to come forward one at a time and speak your piece and give us some information, input on what you think is the issues that you have before us. So Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director, would you please come forward and give a little synopsis of what we're going on? And maybe it might be a good idea. Are we recording this?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can turn the podium and face the crowd.
Then I don't think I'm facing the camera, so.
Oh, is that right? Well, then, okay, Brian, thank you very much. Okay, if you would please, yeah, I guess we're between a rock and a hard place here, so we'll go like we usually do. Thank you, Britt. Brian, would you please begin with, give us a synopsis of the tree policy and how we are implementing the tree system. So thank you.
Thank you. Very encouraged to see so many people from the public here, and I probably will keep turning around tonight to address people. I know we have a majority of our Park and Rec Commission in the audience today also, which comprises the City Tree Board that the city has set up. Back in 1993, the city adopted the regulations regulating tree and shrub planting and maintenance on city property, which also gave the city the authority, or the tree board the authority, to recommend trees on private property that needed to come down. Currently, the city has a large number of trees throughout our park system and then also throughout our boulevards. Now, care of those trees is done by a couple of groups. One, the Park and Rec Department. Two, Public Works Department. The Utility Department also does tree work, but most of that is the tree work that is in power lines. So a lot of those are privately owned trees that are in the alleys. We do have representatives from all three entities here tonight. In addition, we have our city engineer here tonight, because as you read through the tree policy, you'll see that removal of trees or care of the trees, the city engineer does have a part of that. Historically, the city of Virginia has let trees go and has only taken care of them when there has been an emergency need to do so. Pretty much after a big storm has come through, knocked down a tree, doing call-outs because a tree has fallen and is blocking the road. This past summer, we saw a lot of that with the past drought from the past couple of years, which had weakened some of our trees. The trees are aging, so we had a lot of limbs dropping. So our Parks and Rec and our Public Works Department maintain picking up those fallen tree branches, removing those trees. We take them to the city dump. Some people come and take that for firewood. Other than that, then all the brush and limbs are burned a couple of times a year so that we can maintain that area. We have not done a very good job in replacing city trees. However, unfortunately, a lot of our boulevards are not wide enough to be a good location for a lot of species of trees, which is one of the things that Public Works looks at is our aging trees and the negative impact that those trees are having on our infrastructure, such as the curb and gutters, and things like that. When Parks and Rec looks at a tree, we're looking at the health of the tree. Is there rot on the tree or obvious dead branches that need to be removed? So with several different groups that look at trees, everybody has a different way of looking at trees. How I look at a tree versus how Public Works or our city engineers look at a tree may be completely different. So that gives you a little bit of a rundown on where we are with our tree policy, how it came to be, and how we're implementing it. Does the council have any immediate questions, or would you prefer to open it up to the public comment at this point?
Anyone, I think maybe we would have the public speak, and then we could address each one of those questions individually as the councils deem appropriate to, and as the councilors request to speak, we can answer the question. We certainly would call upon a councilor to do that. So everyone has a copy of the policy and how we go about that. So we can start with the general public. As anyone would like to address the council this evening, welcome to come forward at this time. And we ask that you come, if you come in a group of 3 or 4, that's fine. If we just have one spokesman, or if you just have one person come forward, you'll give it as much time as you need to speak your piece and address the council in any way. And I was remiss when I didn't indicate to everyone that our Park and Rec Commission was here and our city engineer as well. So we're a full city staff here to answer all your questions. So we may call upon our city engineer, we may call upon our Park and Rec director, or maybe if one of our Park and Rec commissioners have a comment, they're welcome to come forward and do that too. So we'll open it up right now to the general public. If anyone have a question or comment, you please come up to the podium at this time, and you're welcome to speak. So does anyone like to come forward right now?
And I will leave the microphone on so that nobody needs to adjust the microphone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silver. Please step forward, and please state your name for the record, and welcome to this special public hearing.
Hi, my name's Christy, and I'm a Virginia resident in Lancia Addition. I appreciate being given this platform to speak today about the shared vision of the city's plan of action regarding trees. Last month, I noticed that trees in parts of Lancia Addition were being marked for removal. Since then, I spent the last month trying to figure out the city's plan. I found the City Council, Public Works, and Park and Rec were not on the same page of what the plan entailed. What I eventually found out was it was due to infrastructure. Trees are being removed and not being replanted on city property. However, I still have a question as who's making these decisions and where is this plan stated? According to Chapter 13.02 of Virginia City Code, it states that it shall be the responsibility of the City Tree Board to study, investigate, counsel, develop, and administer a written plan for the care, preservation, pruning, planting, replanting, removal, or disposition of trees and shrubs in parks, along streets, and other public areas. The plan shall be presented to the council, and following the review and approval by the council should constitute the official comprehensive city tree plan. The board, when requested by the council, should consider, investigate, make findings, report, and recommend upon any special matter of question coming within the scope of its work. I have been asking for the plan, and no plan has been able to be presented to me. When I went to the Parks and Rec meeting in January, they were recently just told that they were the tree board and that they had no part in making the decisions happening in our town. Also, many of the codes talk about needing the approval of the city forester or engineer. So I know you just talked, my question was who that was, and with that, where are the plans coming from if the city engineer is making these plans? And if the tree board isn't making these decisions, I again refer back to who is. Specifically speaking about my block, I would like to know why our trees are being marked for removal. If it's due to infrastructure, what infrastructure do you speak of? It seemed to come as a surprise to Parks and Rec when I stated we had no sidewalks. Being that our trees were recently marked and our sidewalks are covered with snow, it was implied to me that was supposed to be the reason. So where is the plan stating why trees are being removed from blocks, and where is this evidence for the reasons? I have called several towns to find out about their plans, one of them being Ely. I was curious how they were certified as a tree city. Harold Langowski was happy to talk to me about their detailed plan. They had many of the same issues as Virginia. They have the old silver maples and they needed to widen their roads. It sounded like Tree City USA helps cities cut down trees that have to cut down by trees by giving grants to replant. They came up with a plan to move their sidewalks next to the curb for help in snow removal, narrow their sidewalks, and still have enough room to plant trees on city property behind their sidewalk. They also have invested in 15 different tree species that work with infrastructure versus the root balls of the silver maples. Even though many of us love the look of the silver maple, we understand that it does affect sidewalks and infrastructure. Instead of taking the action of cutting them down and not replacing them, which will lead to an urban tree desert in our town, why can't we find a compromise to keep our neighborhood beauty and the functional needs that trees provide for us? Neighborhoods like mine could be polled to see if they like to keep trees or sidewalks. I know many of my neighbors are happy to not have sidewalks. Another plan would be to have the north side of the block to keep the sidewalk, while the south side of the block have the trees to be able to shade the streets in the summer months. Another option, of course, would be to investigate the plan in Ely. We are already losing trees on major avenues and streets due to widening of roads. The city cannot afford to lose trees in neighborhoods as well. The city states that the plan is to let citizens plant in their own yard. However, this will not allow for shade in neighborhoods to reduce the heat index in the summer, nor do residents in Virginia have the space in front to plant trees, and many will not take the financial responsibility and liability of this upon themselves. We live in the North Woods. Our community has always had pride in our trees. Now those trees are getting old. This is a turning point for our town. Do we still want to be the North Woods, or will we transition into an urban tree desert? For many of our streets, once this decision is made, there is no turning back. There is no room to go back and plant trees when there's no room left for them. If Virginia wants to attract future homeowners, where is property value the highest? In neighborhoods with trees. The city needs to have a comprehensive plan that starts with the tree board. We need to think about the future of our city to entice families to be in our community to keep a balance of our aging community. We need to have neighborhoods where people help each other out when our aging population struggles with the maintenance of trees. This decision will have lasting impacts for the direction of our community and the tax base that is left to support the city. I hope we can find a compromise that is sustainable for our community. In closing, I would like to know how the city is going to be moving forward on this plan, Will this plan follow city code, or will the code be revised? And if city code is updated, what does this process entail? Will the plan be somewhere where residents will be able to access the assessment of the city and how it's moving forward? What is the time frame that you expect to move forward on the removal of trees or in making of this plan? I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and clear about the expectations of the city moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that'd like to speak? Okay, hold your thoughts. If you do, please raise your hand or come to the podium, and you're welcome to come and speak at any time. So we'll go around in the room to the counselors. We'll go from right to left and see if any counselor has a question, comment about the tree policy and how we're moving forward, or what plans are in place, or what action we want to take moving forward based upon the individuals coming here concerned about how we assess our tree removal and the presentation made today. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking. I live on 14th Street North. I am near the golf course, and we have, our streets are, the boulevards are full of trees. I did come home one day from work, and my neighbor was outside concerned because at the bottom of our block, closest to the golf course, trees were being removed. And she said, I ran out and I stopped him and asked, why are you taking these trees? And And so she was visibly upset that several trees had already been removed with and I don't believe there was a plan or anything to replace them. And I'll use myself for an example. We have large trees on the boulevard. We had a large tree in our yard. Our sidewalk has a lift about this high, and I feel bad for people walking in the dark because they don't know our sidewalks are up, they're down, they're crooked, and that is from the tree roots. We had to remove our 50-year-old maple tree from our yard, which made me very sad as my father-in-law planted it when he bought the home. We saw that tree grow. It produced maple syrup for all of us. But I knew that when I looked at our house, I knew there was moss growing on the roof. So we had to call a company to come and look at our tree, and I wanted it just trimmed. But when he got up there and he looked at that tree, there's a Y in the branches, and there's a hole in that Y, and he said, I stick my arm in there, I can't reach the bottom. And he said, I'm not telling you it's going to fall, but he said, eventually, that is going to fill and it's going to rot. And when it does fall, half of it's coming on your house, half of it's going on your neighbor's house. There was no trimming of the tree. The tree came down. I was very sad for about 4 months before I said, we need a tree. And we went and purchased a tree and put another maple tree there. So I understand both sides of this, that these trees they're large. When I was door knocking before the election, I ran into a neighborhood where people came out and showed me the street and said, please do something about this street. This is from tree roots. So, but I also love nature. I love the trees. I love that they're in our neighborhoods. So I am anxious to hear what the rest of the council feels on this, because I truly understand both sides. And when that tree came down, for 7 hours, I took a picture about every 5 minutes of every limb that came down until they got it to the ground, and it made me very sad that it was that big of a tree, but I also understood what it was doing under the ground. So, but thank you for speaking. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Would you please come back up to the podium so the rest of the public can hear you saying, I appreciate that, thank you.
And I think a lot of us understand the trees have to go. I just think the process of how it's going about it, and does it need to be clear cut, or can, 3 trees on the block be cut, 5 years later, another couple trees get cut? And there's plenty of other tree species out there that we can replant that are gonna be smaller, that aren't gonna have the root balls that are gonna affect. So it's not about, even though many of us love those trees also, that's not really the issue, it's the replanting part of it. And looking into different species of trees that can still provide shade, but don't grow 60 feet tall and have the root balls. So I just kind of wanna make that point. It's not totally about the trees being cut, it's the replanting part of it.
Thank you. Please continue, Councilor Beyondich.
Yes, mine does. I totally understand where you're coming from. So I am anxious to hear, because that was one of the questions I had early on when the trees were coming down, that what is going to happen? Are we going to replant? And what is the plan for the future of the city? So thank you.
Councilor Johnson.
First off, the question asked about authorization. The city staff has a duty based on what we say to keep the city safe, and that's what's happening right now. The Public Works and Parks and Rec, the people we pay, have made decisions that needed to be made relatively quickly, and I will support them in what they've been doing. It's not fun by no means, but it also, on one of the blocks over by the mall, on a not windy, sunny day in the summer, a very large tree branch fell and didn't hit anything, thankfully. If a city tree falls on something, it becomes the city's responsibility. And right now, I feel like we are in catch-up mode. We are trying to get ahead of insurance claims. We're trying to get ahead of injuries. With the snow as it is now, with the way it's stuck to trees, we're very lucky there haven't been more coming down. And you're absolutely right. What is the plan? We have had no reason in the past. We've been reactionary. And you'll see that in a lot of city services in the last 20 years for any number of reasons. The steam system, we're reactionary. We need to get rid of the steam because it leaks everywhere because we haven't taken care of it for 50 years. The trees, in 1997, the city of Virginia was a tree city as well. What happened to that? I don't know. I remember seeing it coming over the bridge from Mount Iron to Virginia. So what I'm looking at tonight as is the first step in how do we create a plan. It's unfortunately government moves at the speed of government, sometimes forwards, sometimes backwards, and sometimes not at all. But this can be the point where we start moving forward. We start looking at it. I'm very supportive of finding better trees, just native grasses. I mean, we're focusing on trees tonight, but this really is a bigger picture of how do we make what we're doing more sustainable. The number of hours that Parks and Recs puts into mowing lawns all summer long is incredible. The number of hours that Public Works goes around and cleans the street cleaners and all that stuff. It's a bigger question about how do we make the city more sustainable, and I think that the trees is the first step partly, but I want to make sure that we have a more comprehensive plan than, as a kind of tease Brian, Parks and Rec, we cut one down, we plant two. Well, that's great, but do we have to cut those two down in 10 years? Like, let's be very thoughtful about this. Let's make sure we're doing what we need to do. And quite honestly, anything the city does costs all of you folks money. And that's one of the reasons, at least in my head, we encourage you to plant your own trees, because that's less, honestly, that we have to raise the levy every year to make sure trees are being taken care of. So if it's a partnership and we move forward, I live on 8th Street and I have some very tall pine trees in my yard. They're not dangerously tall yet, but I know they will be within 10 years or 15 years. And taking down a tree costs thousands of dollars privately. We have some very highly trained individuals, both in Parks and Rec and Public Works, that know what they're doing. I really appreciate that all of you have come in tonight to voice your opinion, and I really would encourage you to say something tonight. Our Parks and Rec Board is here. You have a full council, the mayor, the staff. Even if it's just a question or you have concerns, you got to let us know, because we don't know otherwise. I don't know otherwise. Having trees is absolutely wonderful, and I don't think, I'll just speak for myself, I don't want to see all the trees gone. I actually want to see us figure out how do we plant more in Olcott Park, because a lot of those trees are coming down in the wind and the snow and the rain. How do we make this sustainable? How do we make it something that my daughter and her children can enjoy trees, instead of there being another 50 years where we don't do anything and we're being reactionary again? So again, I would encourage anybody that has any comments or questions at all, even if you don't want an answer right now, but you have questions that we can add to what we need to process, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson. And then Councilor Paulson, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for speaking. I'm sorry, I've been talking all day myself. Okay, so what I'd like to do is kind of go over this. I guess it's our chapter 13, 13.01 through 13.12, and I'll go quick. My understanding then is the tree board consists of the current Park and Rec commissioners, is that correct?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
tree board. That's a
That
designated.
that they are known now or as the designated tree board. And have the current Park and Rec Board, have they known or been aware that this was also a designation for them to assess and make a plan in writing?
I think judging from the previous presenter, that's not the case, but Brian, do you have any more information about that question?
In my first 4 years here, this past year has been the first time that the Park and Rec Commission has ever met in an official capacity as a tree board.
Perfect, okay. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It kind of tells me that this was written in, what did you say, Brian, 1993, and that the city probably hasn't visited this or maybe kept up responsibilities to oversee to the Park and Rec Commission. So I think going forward, it's pretty detailed. Spacing, location, corners, utilities, reasons why you can for removal. Then there's a section C, that deals with trees on private property, that the city can in fact come and cut trees on private property if there's disease or insects that could possibly be spread to plants or trees on public property. So in just kind of quickly reviewing this, it also states, I think we had mentioned this when you were here last time, about there was at some point in time, the city had a forester employed. I don't know if that was full-time or part-time, I can't remember. And now it says, no other planting may be done without the consent of the city forester or engineer. And right now, Matt Reed is our, SEH is our engineer of record. And I don't know that Matt has ever really been aware that that might be a role that you may have as the city would come forward and request you to possibly be a part of a planning committee or planning process. But I understand what you're saying about being cohesive within the departments, creating a document that can be followed, and even like the city of Virginia, we're supposed to do it every 10 years to update our comprehensive plan for the city. This would be no different, just updating your plan for your trees going forward. And so just upon reviewing this, I think one good action step would be to take this back to it would be okay, to the Park and Rec Commission, have you guys look over this ordinance, all 13.01 to 13.12 sections, and then maybe discuss it with the counterparts in Public Works, Public Utilities, our engineer, as we're developing street and alley plans going forward. I think all those 4 departments need to be on board as you create and develop this. I'd like you to look at the ordinance, see if the ordinance needs to be changed, come back to the council, recommend any changes that you could see would be a benefit, and then also come up with an actual plan. But I'd like all of those departments, I think that's why Councilor Beyondich wanted all the departments to be here tonight, and I appreciate all of you being here, as I think because it does affect, if the root system affects the utilities or affects power lines, there's so many different things that can be affected from a crazy root system. The other thing I saw in that section C, trees on private property, we recently had to have, it was one silver maple that kind of grew into 2, and then one on another part of in our backyard, and they were severely diseased and dropping limbs, and it was getting dangerous. And my concern is with some of the language that's in this ordinance, that if the city, what it appears, and I guess our attorney would have to read this and explain it a little, clarify it a little bit for me, but it also appears if a homeowner doesn't take the necessary precautions, the city can in fact come in and do that. And then if the city didn't do that, is there any liability created by the language in this ordinance? So I'd like to have that looked at and examined as well. And our trees, unfortunately, we wanted to maybe do some expansion in our backyard, a deck, and put some footings in, and that root system was horrible. We had to have them come and mulch up basically our whole backyard. So I would agree with, we need to have a removal plan, and then we also have to have a tree planting policy, a replacement policy, but I don't know who we could bring in. Do we need to bring in an expert regarding the types of trees? Maybe we could look at Ely's plan. My sister was just texting me because she was watching the meeting, and she said my aunt Kathy was on the first tree committee in Chisholm on the city council. So I said I will look into that plan, and she said she was responsible for planting hundreds of trees within the city limits. So if we are going to remove plants or trees, there should be a way that we can form a plan put forward by our Park and Rec department or our commission, excuse me. And if the ordinance needs to be revised in any way, that's something I think we, as a city council, should look at upon recommendation further from the Park and Rec Commission. But I do think that it's never really been addressed since I've been here, and I really appreciate your group coming to the table, and we all love our trees, and we also need to work toward, Matt Reed has been working on our street and alley expansion and redoing streets, and some of that, we are taking those sidewalks away. So how does that fit into the whole planning process, if you have to remove boulevard trees? And you're right, it's not a lot of room from some people's, the end of their home to the sidewalk for being able to plant on your own property. So, and go ahead, Jim.
Jim, would you please come forward and thank you. This is Jim Rosvid, our Public Works Director. Jim?
Good evening. See, the one thing I was going to say, the one thing we might want to look at when we're taking down these trees is not putting up another tree right away, because that is part of your infrastructure. Otherwise, we're putting the cart in front of the horse. So it is, because if we're looking at coming in redoing infrastructure and that, we don't know what's got to go in that ground there. There's so much that's got to come out of the ground. Them, especially the maples, them root balls are the size of a pickup truck and bigger. So we don't know what we're going to get into, what we're tearing out of there, how much curb and gutter, how far back we're going. So the problem I see, though, is these trees have outgrown the area they're in now. Those are the ones we're concentrating on right now that are extremely overgrown or extremely fragile. Everything we've marked out there, there's a reason for it to come down. We're not picking at one or another, and we've been in contact with the homeowners in front of them trees, and they've pointed things out to us. So that's what we have been working with that. But to plant something right away to replace that, I don't feel it makes any sense, so.
Thank you, Jim.
And I guess just to tack on to that, go ahead.
Okay, I want Mr. Heminger, would you like to come forward and please state your name for the record? And,
Well, you already did that, so
well,
put a bill in front of that.
Okay,
I'm
this
from
is-
Virginia as well.
okay, Bill Heminger.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, my experience, everybody's covering certain things, and my experience, and you were my witness. You're the one in the room that can actually say you were there and you've seen it from beginning to end. I had a tree that was a silver maple that I just really liked. And unlike all the other trees, you came to the house, you sat there for an hour with me, and we
I did.
looked at it. And the tree, unlike other trees, instead of it being like this, it was one of those silver maples that all the branches were really high and they all went straight up. There was none of this where the branches were hanging out over people's property. So one day I was sitting there, city truck pulled up, and this was the man that replaced, I believe, John Bachman. And so I knew he was influential, but he was looking at the tree, so I went over there and asked him, is there something wrong with the tree? And he says, yeah, the tree's got rot on it. And he says, and this isn't two stories, there's only one story. This is the fact. And those are the words I actually used, if you can remember. He said that it had rot in it and it had to be removed. And I said, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And he said, this is the part that he says, you see where the Y comes down? You see how dark it is right up at the very top where that initial Y is? He says, that is where it's diseased, and it's come down along this side over here, and you can see where it's staining the bark. And I didn't want to discuss that with him. I didn't want to embarrass him because maybe he didn't understand that. But there isn't a tree in the city or in the country that the north side isn't darker than the south side. And as far as in what you mentioned, where in the Y that you could reach down, I got my long tree ladder and I crawled right up there and I went and looked at the top of it. And I asked this gentleman, I says, did you look at the top of the Y to see what's up there? No. So first thing I thought of is instead of embarrassing, in fact, if you know in your houses, on your north side, it looks like you've got mud on it. The south side, nothing. That's the sun bleaching. So all of this darkness on the bark, the sun got to it to fade it. And all that is, and I talked to an arborist about this, all that is the water coming down from the rain and collecting there, so all the dirt that you see is collecting there. That's all it was dirt on the bark. So the first thought I had is go find me a professional. So I found an arborist, and that's where I told you about that. I says, he ain't coming for another week and a half, but I said, postpone this thing at least for a week and a half. Tuesday, he's coming. I will pay the cost. He will report directly to the city council. I mean, that's a no-lose situation. This way here, you know, if in this is what this guy is he's from Duluth. He specializes in this, of knowing if trees have to come down. I mean, he's insured, bonded, licensed. This guy's a professional. They hire him in Duluth to remove trees that are dangerous to the public, save trees that don't have to be. So I didn't see this as a no-lose situation for me or the city. Once I found that out, I told that to you. Your meeting came the day after I went and talked to this gentleman again. I went to his place and I told him, I says, hold off with that. I got a professional coming. I'm paying for it. The city, he'll report to the city. And his comments were, he says, oh, don't do that. Don't spend the money. I'll take care of this. Trust me. I will take care of this. So then it also got changed to, you do understand that it's lifting the sidewalk. I says, yes, it's about 1 3/4 inches. I just measured it. And I says, my thought is, if it's not the health of the tree until we prove that it is the health of the tree, there is a number of trees just west of us on the same block going down, another block down. Sidewalks are lifted 4.5, 5.5, 6 inches. I got you in my car and we drove down and we took a look at it.
We did.
Actually sitting like this. And those trees are bigger than that tree, and the branches actually hang over the people's houses and cars. They weren't nice and straight like this. So I asked this gentleman if we could just hold off on this, and if it's a matter of cutting trees and making the time, because it was getting late in the fall, they had summer help helping them. I says, can you remove those trees? Because that seems to fill everything that you're saying that you're concerned about, having to remove trees. And let's just wait on this one. Then I had you come over, and I repeated the whole thing to you. On Tuesday, he's coming, gave you a date. Those trees are still there today. That tree came down. He had to hold off till after Tuesday. Monday, that tree came down. There was loaders, giant trucks, dump trucks, and an army of people with chainsaws. My wife was there because I wasn't home. She wanted to take a video of it. And can't hide rot in a tree like that because they had to cut it in small sections. So we got to see literally every part of it. She videoed it, she took photos of it, and even the people removing it says that was a perfectly healthy tree. So where I'm leading to is this. Should be decisions like that being left to one person? Come on. I mean, and what concerns me, and I'll get in my story, is I've got 4 trees on my boulevard. That goes back to planting the right tree. In the old days of Mr. Bachman, very nice gentleman, the city owes him a lot. But in his day, they basically just grabbed a bunch of trees and they said, so many of these trees, so many of the trees, so many of that tree. In case there was a disease, you didn't want to wipe them all out. The trees they were picking were apple trees and cherry trees. I had a conversation with him on that, on my boulevard in particular, not to plant those trees because they're not going to live. I lived on Fifth Avenue for a number of years, and you can literally see where the apple trees died. Cherry trees before them. So they planted what they had, you know. They happened to have apple trees, and they planted those. Those died within the first 5 years. So I planted myself American lindens. Big tree, but they're healthy. cherry trees. Those didn't make it into the second year, so then I planted 2 more. So I just decided to do all my own planting. Now, where I'm coming with this is, perhaps not placing decisions of influential persons making decisions by themselves. What happens if some morning that same person or person who thinks like him comes out and looks at one of my trees, darkness and the blackness on the side of it, and I wake up some morning, chainsaws outside my window. Shouldn't a person like that, who makes the decisions himself, pretty much judge and jury, shouldn't he be replaced with somebody, or at least hire one? They can come periodically every couple of years and determine what trees need to be. And I know that could be expensive, but removing trees ain't cheap either, because you're planting the wrong types of trees. That was my thought. I just don't want it to happen to my trees because one person basically is judge and jury. There is no conversation. He just decided that tree's coming down. And I understand for those people who do not like trees, I get that. Shade is people who love flowers. Shade's our enemy for flowers. And there's the leaves. Who wants to rake leaves in the boulevard and have them blow into your yard? I get that. Lawnmower to cut over the top of them. Every now and then I got a big branch I have to haul. Other than that, but that's me, and then the concerns of people who are more concerned over their safety of their house and their family. I get that, but then again, that comes down to the trees you pick. Just to have a policy. Well, George, we defer all of our trees decisions to George. That's what he does. Come on, that just doesn't seem right. So that was my thoughts on that. Oak tree, if you know anything about oak tree, there are some oak trees that will survive up here. And if you plant an oak tree and it's young, I asked the guys in Minneapolis, there's some friends that I have that work for the city, I said, why do you plant so many oak trees? He says, they never grow. He says, you're kicking down the can down history years before those trees will have to ever be removed. Take 100 years for one of them to ever get mature enough to cut down. Again, if this decision is made by just a handful or a single person, shouldn't there be some thought placed to this? And then another thought, I thought I had heard that they said that there was going to be no replacement. Gentleman over here gave a reason, good reason, for not replacing them right away. But if there is a no replacement policy, period, on that, I mean, isn't that something that should be done through a referendum? Again, a handful of people decide to make decisions for the rest of those of us who actually like trees. I guess that's pretty much my thoughts on it, is perhaps replace the decisions of one person. Instead of relying upon one person to make all the calls for everybody in town. It seems to be have a little more structure. That's my thoughts, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay, very good.
I stand up there where you can hear me. I don't have to listen to somebody's back that's talking this way, and I never heard a word what he said. But I want.
Well, please come up to the microphone, Mr. Stickney.
I can talk long enough, loud enough for everybody in here can hear me. I had Boy Scouts for 30 years, so I know how to talk loud, which way to look, which way not to look.
We'd like to, we're recording this for the general public, so if you just indulge us, Mr. Stickney, so that, everybody can see what you're doing and hear what you're saying. So thank you, Mr. Stickney.
Yes, I just had the opportunity. I realize I have a large land and property on 14th Street in the 400 block of Virginia. The trees, any one of the 3 big ones that are in front of my house were to fall, they would wreck my house. So I had a concern last year, and I called my insurance company to ask them, would you cover my damages to my house if a tree from on the boulevard falls on top of it? No, they will not cover your house. So if you're thinking you have insurance, you better check with them, because I found out they would not repair nothing. It was the responsibility of the city of Virginia to fix the repairs. They would not pay anything on it. So I have 3 big trees up in front of my house. What would I like to tell the council? Cut them down. I can't afford to even replace one window in my house. I live on $500 a month. So any damage I have to my house, I'm what you call SOL. I don't know if you know what it means, but
Yeah, I don't think you have to, I think we understand what it means.
you understand what I'm saying.
Thank you.
So anyway, my suggestion, I'd like the 3 big trees in front of my house, cut them down. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Stickney. Okay, I have a couple comments, but I think I'll reserve them until the rest of the council gets done. We'll go to Councilor Motley, then back over to Councilor Johnson, then over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Motley.
I just want to thank you guys all for coming. This is more people than I've seen in my whole city council tenure so far in one room. And thank you for your presentation. I actually, if you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind getting a copy of that. I am learning a lot just listening to you. I do love trees. I think we all can agree that we know some of them are definitely causing infrastructure problems. I had the same problem as you, Maya, when I was door knocking. I a few times hoped I wasn't on camera when I was taking a slight digger on those sidewalks. So I have a tree in the front of my house that died about a year ago, and I, without a doubt, am missing the shade right now. So I can understand where you don't want trees to come down that are, they're pretty. My tree was pretty, and in the afternoon, I really miss the coverage because it's no longer alive. But there's no doubt, I think, going forward, we need to work on the tree policy. I'm not sure how we go about doing that. I'm new to this, but I am on the Parks and Rec. I'm the liaison, which turns out to now be the tree committee. So I'll be working with whomever. You guys can reach out to me. I'll be working with them. And I think you would be a really good voice to work with us. So also, can we plant some trees maybe on the golf course? Random thought for helping my slice. Random, trying to break the ice here. But thank you for coming, you guys. And we're obviously going to be looking into revising things going forward.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, the gentleman before Mr. Stickney, can you clarify when this thing happened with the trees and the single person?
Oh, it was,
I just would like the date, the year, last year, this fall?
5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that there are different employees in place all over the city at this point, as well as different counselors. So I appreciate the clarification of 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. I just want to close up my other thoughts, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Please.
I do feel like it's time, it's very timely. We've taken I think a lot of reason that this is coming kind of front and center is the city's, we're doing a lot of street projects now that we haven't been doing. We're working on the lakes, on the trail system, and so a lot of trees have come down, and I think people are going, hey, what are we doing here? What's your policy? And so I think it's very timely that you're coming forward and that we can evaluate. We have an opportunity now to evaluate how we can do this better. And I really would welcome looking into what other communities have done and seeing what their past successes are. I think that's really important. Also to have the 4 departments come together with the Park and Rec Commission tree board now, and just so that everybody can give some input. And I don't feel like it would be out of round to have is the term arborist? Is that the term, an arborist that has the knowledge of, whether it's dead-end trees coming in every 3 years to do an assessment or whatever, and I would like that to maybe be included in that plan, like when the expectation would be. Is it every 5 years an arborist comes forward? And then also in working with an arborist as to what types of species would be okay for boulevard planting to not interfere with the infrastructure. But I do agree with our Public Works Director, Jim, that if we are taking them down because we're working on a street, we probably need to wait until the infrastructure is in. Jim, is that what your point was, correct? Before we go and replant, so in case we had to go back into that infrastructure, we'd be doing double time removing and then replanting. So I think it's a big charge for the new, for the tree board, going forward with trying to come up with a plan that's comprehensive and it makes sense, and that doesn't change the beauty of our city with all of we have very beautiful trees here. But they are 100 years old, and the example with the oak tree, we're at that 100-year, probably 120-year mark with some of these trees. I think when they took ours down in our backyard, they were over 100 years old. We were very sad to see them go, but our entire, we couldn't do anything in our backyard because of the root system. So I really appreciate you guys all being here, and I think my takeaway from just hearing the feedback and just reading again our own ordinance, it's out of date, and it's time to revisit it and get to work on it. So I hope, as the first speaker said, I hope we can get to this in a timely fashion, and that's a big responsibility, but I really appreciate everyone coming here tonight and expressing their concerns. The last and final point that I will make is, if a tree is slated to come down and someone doesn't like this, the neighbor or the homeowner doesn't like it, on section 13.11, there is a right of review by the city council. It is not there, since this was written in 1993, I would assume this was in place before they were coming to your area and taking trees down. But citizens do have the right of review by the city council. So that indicates to me that this ordinance has been long on the books. Maybe people didn't know they had the opportunity or the ability to come and do an appeal. But as of now, what's on the books is the public does have an appeal process to come and have a discussion with the city council, and they do have the right to review any decisions of the tree board. And I don't go back that far, but
Yeah, please come forward and to the microphone, sir. Thank you.
They were ignored. They were ignored. Oh, sorry. Anyways, yeah, you're reading rules.
I'm reading
That-
the
that-
actual ordinance
And
that
was that-
Virginia adopted in
And what year?
1993.
93.
Yep.
So how do you explain my situation when I went through, I brought the mayor into it, I discussed it with him, and all I wanted was just to hold off on it for a week and a half, and that was completely ignored. How do you explain in light of that? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I kind of am, because that's exactly what happened. I brought it to your attention, I followed this, exactly what you said, and instead of even being reasonable or even listening to me.
And if I may interrupt, Mayor, if I may?
Yeah, well,
The actual ordinance
one moment,
reads,
sir.
the actual ordinance reads, any person aggrieved by any ruling or order of the city's tree board may appeal to the city council, which shall hear the matter and make a final decision. The city council shall have the right to review the conduct and decisions of the city's tree board. The city council may modify, affirm, or reverse any determination of the city's tree board. So I don't know what the situation was back then, but the proper channel would have been to get on an agenda and to have that agenda item reviewed by the city council. But in my opinion, I probably as a layperson wouldn't have known that this ordinance even
Well,
exists.
I had
or
the
what
mayor
my-
sitting right there who had been on the city council for a number of years, so he couldn't say that he wasn't aware of certain rules or how things were done. It should have been probably discussed there in our hour of sitting on front of my porch, that, that's a very good thing, you should bring it to the city council, and I'll get involved personally to make sure that that doesn't happen until we have that arborist come or you discuss it, but so I felt pretty good after I got into talking to him, and then I had the mayor talking to him, And I showed them the 1.5 inch, 1 3/4, the sidewalk was raised. I had no doubt in my mind you were gonna do the right thing by putting a hold on it, and then using that labor that they had to use before school was gonna start again, and take down the trees that were bigger, worse, and that really were picking up the sidewalks, and waited for my paid-for arborist to actually professionally check it out. I would have paid, they would have reported to you. I went away feeling that there was no way this was gonna slide in. Not knowing that rule, I was just going basically on just common sense and just
in-
politeness. And yet,
I would say in defense, I mean, this is now, I'm in my, how many years? Sixth year here. I didn't know this existed either. And
Okay.
it's not often that I go and review all of our ordinances, which I probably need to refresh, I mean, and there's lots of, this is 13 chapters of ordinances. There's many ordinances that I think, and I think right at one time, when our fire marshal was here, we were undergoing reviewing of all of our ordinances, and it takes a long time to codify things, so,
did I do anything, I always put myself in your place, you put yourself in my place. Did I do anything wrong? Would you have done it exactly the way I did? Just a yes or a no?
I was in a very similar situation. I live on 12th Street South by the tennis courts, and there were very just random selected trees that came down off my boulevard, and 2 of them were in front of our house that we absolutely loved. They had some X's on them. We didn't know why they got taken down, but we missed them. We missed the squirrels. We missed the shade. Didn't miss the leaves. But I didn't really know at that point in time that there was an action step because I always thought the city owned the trees on the boulevard,
I had the mayor
which
on
I
my,
believe that is in fact the case
had the
regardless.
mayor on my front porch.
Well,
And I offered to pay for an arborist, and I couldn't even get a 2-week buy.
and I appreciate
And they had
you
the
coming
option,
forward.
and they had the option of cutting down trees that really had to be removed because of the sidewalk. And again, it just came down to too much power is in the hands of too few, and that's
And I
my,
think
that's my point.
kind of, sir, I think this is what we're trying to get at tonight is how we can best move forward to develop a plan so people know, what's an option for me if it's slated to come down and I don't agree with that, here's your option, here's how it works. So I think I just really am thankful that there's so many people here and that we can now develop, after hearing everyone's opinions and understanding, that we can now come and try to work together to develop something that really does make sense for our city. So,
Get
thank
that,
you, Mayor.
and I guess we'd have to say that, I guess that one got away from us then, didn't it? Kind of was overlooked and probably wouldn't have happened again, but I'm just pointing out it happened to me. And if it happened once, you have to assume it can possibly happen another time. And that is that is basically the brunt of everything my point is that doesn't happen again. It's just basically a rough shot right over the top of me. This is a decision that was made and they were gonna go through with it, and they had the date on Tuesday, and said Wednesday, it'll probably cut down on Tuesday. That's the way it appeared to me, but again, you just don't want to have that happen again. Just too much power is in the hands of too few to make decisions like that. I would think that, and again, things like trees, deciding whether they're going to replace them or not at all, again, I would think that would have to be something that should be brought up to a referendum. Makes sense. Rational. So, anyways, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, if you want to stay up here just for a moment, Mr. Hammerger, because I would like to clarify to the general public and those who are listening at home that, just to clarify a couple of things. I did come and sit on your porch. I did listen to what you had to say. I did express the concerns that you have regarding the tree to both our Park and Rec Director and to our Public Works Director. Ask them to come and take a look at it, to rethink that, take a look and see if it has to be come down, if it needs to come down, and to make a decision based upon your expertise with respect to that. And I didn't run roughshod over you.
No, I didn't say
I did not ignore you.
The system did. I guess I would say
What
no
I'm saying-
individual person in
yeah,
the
If
system
you just
did.
let me finish for a moment. I tried everything I could within my power and authority to address your concern, and I addressed it to their proper level of management to do so. They came and inspected the tree. They determined it needed to be come down, and I took that as the individuals who were responsible for doing that to take the tree down. They made the decision to do so, and I supported that decision to take it down. Now, who's responsible for taking the tree down? I guess me and the city council was responsible for having that tree taken down based upon the recommendation from our staff. So that's why we were here tonight, here, Mr. Hemmerson, is to talk to everybody and to determine what next steps are we taking to prevent that very thing from happening and to make sure that it is a policy that's in place where everybody's on board in our four-prong approach with the city council, the mayor, the public works director, and the public and the park and rec director, and the citizens and the staff and the individuals and recommendations from our Park and Rec Commission. So as we move forward here, and this is not a public hearing, this is a public meeting to determine what our next steps are. And I think that's what we're trying to do, addressing your concerns and the concerns of those who have spoken for us today about what path do we need to move forward? How do we clarify things? And I think if we look at peeling away the onion, I look at different things. We talk about personal experiences and those kind of things, but you know, we don't have a forest and we don't have an arborist. You know, I think Park and Rec will meet with our Park and Rec Director, the Commission, and our Public Works Director, and then we'll develop a plan, hopefully, to have some of the people who spoke here and have some input as well to determine what our next steps are and how we take a step-by-step approach to the removal of trees. So removal of, defining the health of the tree is one, removing the tree is second, and replacing the tree is third. And so why do we take down the trees in the first place? We have to articulate a good reason to the general public and those individuals who live in the residence why we're taking that tree down. And if we have to use a professional which to do that, whether it's an arborist or a forester based upon what it says in the ordinance, we'll probably have to do that. But I'm going to look at, and we, I think as a council, is going to look at the opportunity for those who are here today, would like to sit in and give some input. And, you know, the charge is for the Park and Rec Commission as the tree board to take a look at that and seek input from the public, determine what they need to be done, listen to their concerns and comments, design a plan moving forward. When you come to a consensus in which to do so with all parties involved, then come back to the city council with a policy, a process that we think we should be moving forward. And if there's any changes in this ordinance that has to be done, I'm certainly supportive of that. That's why we're here tonight, to make sure that gets done. Your concerns are valid and the valid concerns of everyone else who spoke here today. So our job at this public meeting is to seek your input, which we have done. And so we continue to seek more input from you if you'd like to do so. If we have to use some other professional entity in which to accomplish our goal and objectives, that's something that will come based on a recommendation from our staff and from the citizens that are here today. At least some of you may want to sit on a conversation moving forward. So we'll try to do that. I mean, me as an individual, I was not, I was unfortunate that their tree got cut down. You know, I think your next door neighbor, a couple of ways.
I gotta just stop and say, I'm not blaming any one individual person. This is about the system. That's all it is.
And that's what we're trying to change.
You took that personal, I believe, and I can see where you would. But the point is looking forward, if the homeowner actually offers an arborist, and that was just completely ignored, and they couldn't wait for several days, there's a problem with the system.
Well,
The ball got dropped, and I'm okay with that. It's already done. But the point is you don't want to see that happen again. I took all the precautions I thought I could possibly do as a homeowner, and it was definitely ignored. I mean, when you talk to two different people and they both are the heads of the city, one in that area, and the words bringing an arborist in and me paying for it was just like, it was almost like I never even said that. So anyways, it is what it is. You just don't, just as long as it's aware that a mistake was made and you just don't want to make it going forward. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Not blaming anybody. Again, that's what systems are made, is to be changed and replaced and for better things. I'm just using this example. I'm not crying over this. It's just using this as an example of you don't want to have that happen again. So are you good with that?
I was good with it from the very beginning, but I just want to clarify. That's all. Before we go to Councilor Johnson, please come forward. Please come forward, and then we'll have our Park and Rec, our Public Works Director give a little speak and some information, then we'll have Councilor Johnson. Please announce your name for the record and welcome.
Okay, thanks. My name is Sue Gouache. I've lived in Virginia my whole life. I've lived in Vets Addition almost 40 years. We have beautiful trees there. And I understand that the silver maples are gonna be a problem, and I don't have a problem if they come down, and as long as they're replaced. But my question is this: if there's a tree that's got to be taken down, is the homeowner given any kind of notification?
Well, I do know that in most recent times, our Public Works Director, Jim Rosvet, has notified the homeowners and the residents that are affected by that tree, take it down and let them know that it's going to be cut down and the reason why.
So going forward, if the homeowner is notified and wants to dispute this, can they put a stop to taking the tree down until it goes through the process?
Yeah, under the ordinance for public, you have a right to appeal before it comes down, yes, you do.
So this, what happened to this gentleman shouldn't happen going forward?
Correct, but the council does have the right to explain, if, when you bring it forward, they may not agree with you, but they will review it.
Right.
So they'll take a look at it, and we'll go over the reasons why it's coming out. If
I
you're
understand
having
that.
multiple sewer claims in that year, then we're probably gonna have to take the tree
I
out.
understand that, but in his situation, the tree didn't end up being diseased. He asked for it to be inspected by an arborist first, so.
I think there's a little more to his story that we don't have yet either. That was 6 years ago. The
Right,
employees
but-
that were working at that time are no longer here, and so we don't have the background information on what happened on that
Right,
situation.
but I'm just saying going
Correct. If in your-
forward,
if your
this
neighborhood-
this type of thing shouldn't happen.
Yep,
So-
in your neighborhood, if you're notified your tree's coming down, you have the right to come talk to us and ask what's going on. Mr. Silber, our Park and Rec Director, hasn't explained quite yet what we normally do in those situations. Then we ask you, would you like a tree back in your yard? We move it back a few feet, and we'll give you a tree back.
Wanted to,
Yep.
because living where I live, I've never been notified of any tree coming down, and my trees are still there, but it's gonna come to a point where,
You have very large trees in that neighborhood, yes.
yes.
Yes, you do.
And the beauty of those trees, I would be disappointed if all those trees were gone. Very disappointed, so. And
They
as
are gorgeous, and you
taxpayers-
also have very bad sidewalks and falling curb
Right,
lines and
I
things we have to
understand,
address.
and I understand all that.
Yeah.
But as taxpayers, we should have some voice, so, thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to, let's go to Councilor Johnson, questions, well, Mr. Rosvet, our Public Works Director, and then we'll go back again to Mr. Stickney, and then over to the rest of the council. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did some little digging and asked a couple of questions, and just so you all are aware, in the last 3 or so years, we've probably planted about 75 trees in town through where there was once a great big field. There's now a big building with a lot of trees. The new Iron Trail Motor Event Center, there's about 30 trees that were planted around that as part of the redesign. So there is a conscious effort to plant trees as we're moving around town, as if we're redoing things. We planted trees on Chestnut Street in the 418 Pocket Park. There's a couple of I don't know, they're deciduous trees. I don't know what kind they are, but there's trees there. So we are, as we're moving forward with the new staff and with everything, there are efforts being made to plant new trees in places where they will be healthy and they will grow. So I just don't want this to sound like there's never been a tree planted in Virginia and we're a bunch of heathens getting rid of nature. That's not where we're going with this. And it's just been said, having the plan moving forward is going to help us. It'll be, everything we do in this room is public. You are always welcome at any time to come to tomorrow we have a Buildings and Grounds meeting at 11 o'clock. Parks and Rec meets the third Wednesday of every month at 5 o'clock. 4 o'clock at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Sometimes they move it around. We meet, the Committee of the Whole meets every first and third Tuesday at 9 a.m. City Council meetings are 5:30 every second and fourth Tuesday. So weekly, you all have an opportunity to have input into what's going on. So please be aware of that, and everything we do is wide open. And if it's not, then you all need to come here and tell us what we're doing wrong, because you elected us, and that's why, well, I'll speak for myself. You elected me, some of you did, and that's why I sit here, is so that I can make sure everything's open. So I just wanted to put a little sunshine for the trees to grow, because they are growing and we are doing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Mr. Stickney, we have our Public Works Director who's been patiently waiting to maybe give us some information, some clarity, and then we'll have Mr. Stickney speak and go back to the council. Mr. Rosvit.
I guess I just wanted to clarify that I am new at the city. I've been here a little over a year. I do have an extensive background in construction, management, trees, dealt with trees. I worked for another government entity for years. I'm all for the trees. I love the trees. My yard's full of them. But the one thing we did change is Parks and Rec are overloaded on trees. And they do need a lot of attention. So what we've done is we've put together a plan between the two of us to kind of go around. So we've been fielding a lot of calls at Public Works about these trees. So anything that my crew has cut in the time that I've been here, I've been in personal contact with those homeowners in front of those trees. I've sat down on their steps, I've had conversations with them. I know I'm getting some head shakes back here, but I'm not the only one that's cutting trees. The Park and Rec are also. And they have a separate crew. Sometimes they're out, sometimes we're out with them. But when my crew is out and we're doing our work, you can come to my office at any time and look. I have their phone numbers, the dates I talked to them. It's all documented right by the trees that we removed or we were planning on removing. So that's where things have changed with the changing of the guards. Communication's a big thing, and that's something we're working on. You know, we don't want to see those trees go as much as anybody else, but when they're doing damage to the infrastructure, you've got 80-year-old ladies or the elderly saying, you know, I can't live in my house, I can't pay to maintain this tree. They make a very good point, and then you see how hollow and brittle the trees are. If you ever want to stop down in my office, I have videos of some of the trees we've taken down, how rotten they are, how brittle they are. We're not out to rid the city of all the trees in the city, but we are working on infrastructure. In fact, I've got about 40 or 50 trees that have to come down in February and March. So we are going to be out cutting trees in February and March again. For 6th Avenue, which road construction starts this summer, 13th Street over by Virginia Grill to 6th Avenue, and 17th Street south by Super One. All those trees in the boulevard will be removed because they're scheduled for infrastructure, complete infrastructure on those streets. So I just want to make people aware that we are going to be back out cutting trees to help with the development of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Rosvit. Appreciate it very much. Mr. Stickney, once again, and then we'll go to the council. Thank you. Mr. Stickney.
Sorry to take up all your time, but I'd like to verify my request. I don't want my trees cut down, but I would like to see them get pruned so that they're not going to fall on my house. If they could prune the trees, I like trees. I got nothing against them, so I didn't mean I wanted you to cut them all down completely. If they could prune them a little bit, cut some of them branches that would cause a problem to my house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stickney. Okay, let's start left to right. We're patiently waiting first, Councillor Paulson, then Councillor Friedlieb, and then back over to Councillor Beyondich. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you so much, Mayor. So what I guess I'm hearing from tonight, there's a notification process, maybe after, at our next meeting, when we can actually vote, we need to adopt a notification policy that, because it's new between Park and Rec and Public Works. You guys have notified, maybe Park and Rec isn't notifying, I don't know how that process is, but let's solidify the process. So let's maybe do a motion at our next meeting to solidify our process. The first process would be a notification to the homeowners. I don't know if we do that in writing. I know when things are going to be done and the utilities are going to be shut off, I get a little sticky on my door. So maybe we talk about a notification process. The gal that came, you in the back that came forward and were wondering what your rights were in terms of reviewing according to the ordinance that's in place right now. First of all, though, you'd need a notification to know that your tree was coming down. Second of all, then it would go before the tree board, and I'm assuming then the tree board would almost function like the Planning and Zoning Commission does, where you're gonna now be approving removal of trees after notification. So there's gonna have to be a level of communication from Public Works, Park and Rec coming to the tree board, because that's the process outlined in the ordinance. So there needs to be a notification. If you have an issue with your tree being removed, you need to first approach the tree board, and if the tree board turns your request down, then the final exhausted option, or exhausted, whatever the option would be then to come before the city council. So there needs to be a process, though, and I don't know that we have that in terms of that. The first step of the notification, which would give the homeowner the ability to go before the tree board, which is the Park and Rec board, and then we would get a recommendation from the Park and Rec board, and if the resident still didn't get satisfaction, then they can remedy, the last remedy is to come before the city council. That's the way I'm reading our current ordinance. So I think at our next meeting, when we can make a motion, we make a motion to make sure homeowners are notified of trees coming down. My next question, and this is my final thought or input here so far, do we put replanting when, Jim just came forward and said we're taking how many trees down? Matt, do we put replanting in our street budgets when we are doing our actual, street work, when we're bidding and, we're saying, hey, we're going to take X amount of trees down, but yep, we're going to probably replant this amount. Do we put that in our budget? Do we have that? Thank you.
This is Matt Reed, our engineer of record for SCH. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. Sometimes, okay, so it's been a little bit, mostly on the street and infrastructure improvement projects, we have not been. It's certainly a practice we can take up if that's the direction that the council wants to go, or the tree board, or however this moves forward. Again, looking back isn't gonna do us any good, we gotta look forward, right? So, there are, as was mentioned by a few people now tonight, there are a number of species of trees that can go on boulevards that aren't gonna impact, sidewalks, pipes, things like that, so that can certainly be looked at, but I guess that's a long answer to, sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't on those projects.
So, okay, so that would be another, I think, topic of discussion for us to go forward then when we are doing our budgetary process for new streets and infrastructure, that tree replanting should be a part of that process. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Thank you, Matt. Councilor Freely.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate that. Obviously, we're all here for one purpose, and that's because we have an emotional attachment to the beautiful trees that we have in this town. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So we all have something in common tonight. I do want to commend you, Christy, for bringing this forward to us in a public forum. Also, to commend you also for your ability to convey information in public with a passionate heart, but with poise and respect. You didn't come here to really scold anybody about anything, but that you had answer or questions that came up that you were going to now be seeking answers for, and put policies in place that would keep us have a more transparent way of going about this, so that people will be informed when things are going to happen in their front yard. And all of a sudden they disappeared and we hadn't known they were going to be disappeared. So in any event, I think this was a very important meeting tonight. I'm glad that the emotions didn't get too spilled over about anything. I think that Mr. Heminger, that should never happen again. I'm hoping that was an anomaly, to be honest with you, where we took something down that was actually a healthy thing, and I hope that can never happen again. And if we have to solicit the assistance of professionals like an arborist and contract out for that, then that's something we'll have to do. I don't think we do make decisions willy-nilly. I'm quite certain that there's collaborative communication that goes on between department heads to determine what we need to do. I've gotten calls from people in neighborhoods also about nuisance trees that they'd like to see come down, and I've called Mr. Rosfit to convey that as well. So they get the information from different areas, and they have to respond to those accordingly. I think very few mistakes are made, but the mistake that might have been made was that we weren't communicating that clearly and transparently, and we will make every effort to do that from this point forward. Again, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm glad that we do share something, that we share the beauty of this town, and it's wincing when we see something come down that we've known our whole life to be beautiful.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Councilor Beyondich.
You, and you pretty much covered it from that end of the room, so I'm not going to take up more time saying the same thing, but I think this is an important issue, and I'm glad that it came forward to us, and we have the opportunity to work on it and make it better. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please come forward. State your name for the record. I know you're a member of our Park and Rec Commission.
Yes, I am. My name's Alan Beer, and I am a forester, just to let everybody know. So, and one of the things I wanted to talk about here, I wanted to listen to what everybody said, but trees are more than just trees. There's two types of trees. There's coniferous trees, and there's deciduous trees. And they all the species require different things to make them grow healthy. We were talking here about healthy trees and not healthy trees, taking them down. Why were those trees not healthy? Just because what caused the rot or what caused the damage to them? Sometimes it's being nicked by a bumper of a car or something like that, and pathogens get into it and kill it. The one thing I want to talk about, though, is this town has a lot of different spots in it that are both dry and it's wet and it drains well. Each of those require different trees, and if you put the wrong tree in the wrong species in a wet spot, it'll die. And if you put the wrong species in a dry spot, it'll dry. So the dirt in my backyard came from the basement, so it's not a good pile of dirt, but I still grow veggies in it. And I've planted a couple of trees there. I have 2 silver maples, which are really nice trees, and they're about 10 years old and they're 30 feet high. So my general advice is you could plant a tree, and if it doesn't do well, try a different species. And if it does well, keep it. You could take it down. Most trees that I see in this town, there's a few that grow pretty age out very young. It's 65 years old. Others of the species can go up to 150 years. So you need to take that into your planning considerations. Just for a little quick information on how to tell the age of a tree, especially a coniferous tree, is there's branch whorls on it. You can see the whorls of the branch, or if they're broken off, you can see where the spots where the knots are. Count those. It's a year between each one going up. You can check that with your Christmas tree. If you get an untrimmed Christmas tree, you can count the whorls going up the tree, and it's a good job for kids. And then take a look at the stump of the tree and see how many rings are there. Should be very close to the same.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beers. We're fortunate to have you on our Park and Rec Board, that's for sure. Please come forward once again.
I just have, it's quick.
Yeah, please come forward. Take your time.
So I'm just, I know Jim had talked about, and I don't know who marked our blocks, but the people on our blocks weren't contacted. So I know that they have contacted other people, and I do know that. But I just know on our block and on the next block over, the people weren't contacted. And I don't know who's marking the trees, so I don't know that. So, and I just wanted to clarify that, because I do know you have been contacting people other places. And so I just want to clarify, so on our blocks that he didn't mention, is there then a cease and desist on our marked trees until there's a plan in place? I guess I just want to clarify that, because I do worry sometimes, and this is where I was in panic mode, that I saw trees kind of coming down and I would call and question and I wasn't getting answers. And then all of a sudden my trees are marked. And I don't know if this is going to happen next week. I don't know if it's going to happen next month. So I just need clarification right now. Is there a cease and desist on that? So I think that's all I have.
Well, if I may, would you please state once again your last name for the record?
Christy Hill.
Ms. Hill, thank you very much. And I think that we're going to be taking some action at the committee of the whole meeting, which will be the following Tuesday. But I don't think any trees are going to be coming down in the next week or so, are they, Jim?
We have a break in the snow, though. We do have to make a push for our summer road construction projects. to get those done. We have to have it done prior to March 31st,
Okay,
the hibernating bat.
okay, well, we would ask that, you know,
But that wouldn't be in Lancy
Addition.
Edition,
No,
that
that-
wouldn't be
no.
my area.
No, that would be on
Correct.
6th Avenue, 13th Street South, and 17th Street South.
Okay, so even though they're marked, they're gonna be safer
What's
ones.
over there?
What's that, in Lancy Edition?
Your Williams Edition?
10th Street South.
okay, you'll take a look at those, Jim?
Yeah, like I say, anything that I've kind of, Brian and I will talk about this after. And I seriously believe there's some few extra X's out on them trees. And neither department put them out there. I know there were some homeowners.
Had some
my
homeowners
understanding, throwing some X's out
marking
there,
trees.
too.
Yes, we did.
So,
Right, and I don't think that's in our,
No, but
because
we did
she
have
has a tree
homeowners-
marked,
We did
but,
have homeowners marking trees.
And
Okay.
that's where I get back to, as long as we communicate, and, you know, I'm very meticulous, I've dealt with it over and over again, so documentation's always been a big thing. Like I say, many long days, or just sitting out on the steps with people, talking about it and saying, this is what we're looking at. And these trees also, we're looking at the city as a whole for the infrastructure.
Okay, I hope the public heard that, but thank you, Christie. So, no more other lights on. So, what we'd like to do, I think, is start putting together a plan through Park and Rec, through Public Works, which you're already working together to do this with our Park and Rec Commission, with Mr. Beer being a forester, which is very fortunate to have him on, so he can provide some additional information. And I'd like to see a meeting come about amongst all of you, and you meeting among staff, but also maybe invite Christie and some of these other individuals who would like to be part of the conversation moving forward. I think it would help that, and it would help develop the policy as we move forward to maybe make some adjustments and changes to this ordinance that we have in place, and come up with a plan where communication, identification, professional determination as to whether or not a tree is diseased or not, as Mr. Hemminger brought forth, and make sure that we're cutting these trees down, there's a valid reason for it and why they're coming down, and the communication piece as well. So I think you all here are an example of what we aren't really being communicative to our community. It's not because of our staff, it's because we've been remiss as far as not being able to follow this ordinance. And frankly, I didn't read this ordinance. I haven't read through this ordinance since I was elected as a city official, because I didn't realize that. I knew that the Park and Rec was responsible for trees, and I knew that Mr. Bachman and Mr. Alto, who were involved, would collaborate together and determine that. We made sure we were understanding that there's, there was professionally being done, and I think that in almost every instance, those trees that were taken down were valid reasons to take them down, but just communicating to the public with respect to that. I'm not saying all of them are that way, but some of them are. So I'd like to see that happen. We'll take some action at the next committee of the whole meeting. But before we close this meeting, is there anything else that anybody would like to speak before the council this evening? And we surely would like to have some of your input moving forward through Park and Rec and through our collaborator and coming forward with some information. And I think Councilor Paulson is prepared at the next committee of the whole meeting and others to make motions to move forward to try to improve our response and how we communicate to the general public with trees, how we bring our trees down. So does anybody have anything else you'd like to add? Please come forward, state your name for the record, and welcome.
Hello, my name's Steve Batilla. The one part I'd like to address is when we dispose of the trees. I understand they get hauled to the landfill. No?
We have a tree dump on North Side that they go to.
All right. Are we allowed to take the drop trees then?
I cannot tell you yes or no. It's a liability for you to go on city property to take city property.
All right.
So technically, no.
All right. I think we should have some kind of access to utilize that wood that we're otherwise getting rid of.
I think that's a valid point. I think maybe we could take a look at, if there's a liability issue, or maybe a waiver you could sign, and to come down and cut the trees down. And frankly, when some of those trees are disposed of, there are some people that sneak in there, and I don't mean sneak, but they drive in there, and they make use of that. They cut it for firewood, whatever the case may be, and we don't publicly authorize that because of the liability issue, but maybe that's something, a policy we could implement to allow people to go in there during certain days in order to accomplish that goal and objective. And the reason that that gate stays closed now is because we have an issue with dumping garbage, refrigerators, freezers and stuff back there, and we have to go and clean that up. And so so we've had that gate closed for it, but you make a valid point. And we should talk about maybe developing a policy that would maybe allow the general public to go in there, or assign for a permit to go in there and cut inside a waiver of liability. And that may be something we can look at, Britt? Potentially? We could, thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
Sir? Okay, anything else? So if you're inclined to provide some input and come to a meeting, you can talk to our Park and Rec director or Public Works director, or maybe should we go through Pamela being our city clerk, and you can pass on any information of anybody that would like to sit in and participate in this process moving forward, because it is a community collaborative, and this is a very important issue, as Councilor Freely brought forth. We all love trees. I've got 35 or 40 trees in my yard. I'm fortunate to have a piece of property up in Midway that provides me some solace, some shade. And I have deciduous trees. I have a conifer trees. I have some silver maple trees. And, and every time I have to cut one down, I've only had to do it twice since I've been living up there. It's not something I like to do. I like to keep my trees, and I'm sure you all want to do the same. So we hope that we'll be able to accomplish that goal and objective. If you would like to attend the meeting, if you ever want to know about the meeting, it's on our website where everybody meets, where our Park and Rec director, Park and Rec Commission meets. And could you please repeat once again, Brian, when does our Park and Rec Commission meet?
Park and Rec Commission meets the third Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock at the Event Center.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing that out, but I just wanted to let the public know, if you go onto the city website, all the meetings are listed there as the dates and times, and public is always welcome to attend our meetings. So if you're ever in question of what meeting you want to attend, go on the website and look it up and attend. Thank you.
And so before we end the meeting, does anybody else from the audience like to come up and speak? About anything, ask any question whatsoever about the issues that you feel are pertinent. Any city councilor has any other information they'd like to disseminate tonight? Britt, our city manager, our city administrator, anything? Pam? Okay, thank you. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and hopefully we'll be able to accomplish and come to resolution and answer the questions and the concerns you brought up, all of you brought up tonight. So thank you very much for coming, and we hope to hear from you again. No other questions come before this meeting. We'll stand adjourned at 7:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone.